always trying to be better versions of ourselves, but when you look at all the amazing character transformations in the world of cinema, sometimes you wonder if your ambitions are even worth the final output. Well, that may have been a bit too philosophical for the TV region, but don't worry, we're not going deep thoughts with the deep. Instead, today we're going to be looking at the top 25 most legendary transformations in the movies. It doesn't matter how smart you may think yourself to be, it's never a wise idea to make fun of a suspected werewolf right before a full moon. Clearly, these men, specifically Dr. Lloyd, had no clue what was in store for them when they tied up Larry Talbot and forcefully presented him to the moon in an effort to prove that he's not a werewolf. As one can expect, this was definitely not what happened. And these wise asses got torn a new one, along with their arms and legs. The focus here is obviously on Larry's transformation into a werewolf, which is freaking brilliant if I may say so myself. I mean, yes, they did use CGI for the moment, but I'd say it was done perfectly without really making it seem too unrealistic. The award for the dumbest man in the room has to go to the doctor, who clearly seemed to be deaf as he couldn't hear the noise of Larry's bones cracking and flesh tearing right behind him. I also found the part where he likened Larry's werewolf story to be as true as him flying through the window, because that's exactly what happens a couple of minutes later. This movie did have its fair share of criticisms, but I definitely think it deserves more love than hate. It's hard to have a video on epic transformations and not include the MCU's king in it. Tony Stark has always been the boss when it comes to sass and savagery, both of which are skills that apply to his transformations as well. The Civil War suit up in the jet is one of the most memorable shots from the entire MCU, and its suddenness totally elevated the impact of the scene. One second, you've got Iron Man pissing off Thunderbolt Ross after violating Ant-Man, and the next you've got him transforming into the Mark 46 and giving us a highlight moment. Tony doesn't need to say anything here because we can already sense what's going on in his mind. The subtlety of his expressions let us know exactly what he's gonna do now, and while the actual suit up may not be that long, it does serve as the catalyst which powered the rest of the movie. I like that Stark describes the suit as high-tech prosthesis, because that's pretty much what they really are. The suits are a way for Iron Man's body to keep up with his mind. The world really needs more of Asian cinema, doesn't it? Whether it's Japanese, Korean, or in this case Chinese films, there's an added edge that comes with the culture, and it doesn't even need to be communicated shamelessly to your face. 2021's A Writer's Odyssey somewhat subverts those expectations by giving us a somewhat meta representation of literally living out a typical Save the Princess story. Now look, I'm not really too good with the names from this film, but I do know that the old dude bearing the mark of Lord Redmayne went on to transform into a flesh suit for the main hero Guan Ning. The battle between them before may have had a clear winner, but the old dude was the biggest archetype of sore loser as he goes on to possess his opponent in a rather scary, but still impressive transformation. The panic on the hero's face as the rubble starts to form an armor around him was priceless, and I have to give it to the actor for pulling off such a convincing performance. The eye forming towards the end of the transformation was also a neat trick. That's just a mere moment from this film, so I suggest you give it a watch.
想挖我隻眼，我唔同意。你真係咯，小鮮肉丸，係小鮮肉丸。We may love watching our favourite characters turning into brutal beasts and deadly creatures, but this particular entry has it the other way around. Look, this is a scene from a Disney movie for kids, so it isn't too over the top or anything like that, but if Emma Watson's gonna kiss you, then any beast would be willing to revert to their human forms. The build up to this transformation is what places it higher than the previous entries, especially if you consider the epic battles that take place in the Beast's mansion before he meets his eventual fate. The Beast's design was also pretty decent, so to see something like that turn into a basic dude with long hair was definitely impactful, to say the least. I don't care too much for the musical aspect of the sequence, or rather the entire movie to be honest, but even then, I'd say the Beast gets a thumbs up from me here. I know for a fact that Hank McCoy would be punching the air after seeing this. Bro would have had the perfect life if he and Mystique had a similar situation. Quentin Tarantino may have a weird thing for feet and all of that, but he does know how to write an entertaining movie as well. From Dusk Till Dawn is the perfect example of that, especially if you're considering the bar scene where everyone turns into bloodthirsty vampires. I mean, I was just enjoying Salma Hayek's captivating performance like any other man of culture, but then Richard had to go on and get stabbed. The transformation that followed may look cheesy to you if you watch it in 2024, but back in 1996, this had everyone in the audience going crazy. It's definitely hinted at when you see Salma Hayek looking at Richard's hand with an odd desire. I mean, Tarantino may not be the worst looking man on the planet, but for someone like Hayek to be looking at him like that, bro definitely had something she desperately wanted. This transformation not only turned the scene on its head, but also the entire movie, because I can guarantee you that nobody walked into this film thinking there were going to be vampires in it. The scene also gives way to an epic display from Seth, so it just goes from strength to strength. You know, people keep calling out rappers like Futures or singers like The Weeknd for being misogynistic about women in their lyrics. However, that doesn't matter at all because of two very important truths. One, they're still amongst the biggest artists in the world, and two, they ain't lying. Okay, now before any keyboard warriors come at me with rage, let me present the transformation of Dr. Manhattan as my counter. Sure, John Osterman's wife was just following protocol by not opening the door to let John out of the chamber. However, shouldn't she have taken more care to at least keep the door open till he got out? Or maybe warn John that he'll get vaporized if he does something as careless as what he did? Anyway, John quickly realized why women can't be trusted, so he turned into the ultimate being, although it must have hurt like hell when he got disintegrated to bits. The moment Dr. Manhattan appeared, it was as if we were witnessing the strongest post-nut clarity a man could ever have experienced. And once again, the woman thing is just a joke, okay? Although I'm sure somebody's going to have a gala time venting it out in the comments. You know, a lot of men put there may not consider yoga to be their preferred physical exercise, but Sean Fifield knows exactly what kind of benefits it can bring to the table. This was exactly why he reacted the way he did to his entire space team when they interrupted whatever the heck he was doing with that pose. Okay, on a serious note, we may not have seen the detailed transformation of his character, but damn, the before and after was surely noteworthy. His face did maintain some semblance of a human being, but the rest of it all was nothing short of being Frankenstein's monster. This is why I'm so conflicted when it comes to Prometheus. It's definitely bad at certain times, but it's so damn good in other parts as well, you know. Plus, with everything considered, Sean's was one heck of a mutation for him not to have turned into a xenomorph. Dude gets shot, torched, and crushed by a vehicle that probably weighs a few tons at least, and was still squirming around. Like, god damn, bro was like the space version of Grigory Rasputin.
What the hell's going on down there?
Professor Remus Lupin would have been my last bet when it comes to guessing secret werewolves, but then again, I guess David Thewlis does have a knack for surprise revelations, just like he did in Wonder Woman as Ares. The best part about this transformation is that it happened in the middle of a very important standoff, so it's like we've just been dealt another major inconvenience. The look on Sirius Black's face also showed how much he hated the part about Lupin, which was why he tried his best to keep him under control. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Unfortunately, we got to witness what I like to call one of the scariest scenes in the entire Harry Potter series. Mind you, this came out all the way back in 2004, so those effects have no business looking as good as they do. Having said that, I also feel bad for Professor Lupin because he clearly didn't like this aspect of himself. But then again, you don't really get to see a whole lot of werewolves happily transforming now, do you?
Okay, so this one isn't exactly a direct transformation, but more like a shifting of consciousness into another body. However, Jake does find himself inside a new vessel, so I'll count it simply because of how much it means to the character. Bro had been on a wheelchair for so long that he could have been put in the same category as Professor X or Joe Swanson. So yeah, I totally side with Jake for wreaking havoc by escaping the medical room just so that he could go out for a sprint. The way he adjusts to his new body is definitely an indicator of how he needs time to adapt to having control over his lower movements, and this is what makes the whole thing a lot more realistic. Sure, maybe the scientists could have anticipated this behavior and had protocols in place for Jake, but then we wouldn't have been able to witness such a memorable moment for a man who has finally broken free from the shackles of his body's confinements. Damn, I'm getting a bit too poetic nowadays, aren't I?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Jake?
Your blurry reflex is good.
I'm always angry.
Therapists and psychiatrists make a lot of bank because of our mental issues, and there's one dude that even they wouldn't ever be able to sort out. It's our very own Bruce Banner and his friendly alter ego, the freaking Hulk. After all the years of effort and meditation Bruce put into his angry green giant, it all went to the dogs during the Avengers film, and then bro decided to give us a very important truth about himself. He's always angry. Man, imagine being around a dude with anger issues who also has the capability to transform into an overpowered green monster. That's exactly what the Leviathan from Thanos' army found out the hard way as the Hulk channeled his inner Saitama to absolutely demolish it with one single punch.
Smash.
The entire sequence, from Bruce revealing his secret to transforming and landing the deadly blow, all happened in a matter of seconds. So yeah, there's no amount of therapy in the world that can keep such a man under control. If he can transform like that at will, I don't think we need to be complaining about that either.
Hold on.
It doesn't matter whether it's Wolverine for the X-Men or a werewolf for Van Helsing. Hugh Jackman needs to have claws in all of his epic battles. His fight against Count Dracula during the grand finale of this film was exactly what we expect to see when a vampire faces off against a werewolf. The best part is that we don't have to watch just one transformation, but multiple sessions, whether they're from Van Helsing or Dracula 2. The instantaneous nature with which Dracula transforms is really impressive, and it also speaks well of the CGI at the time. The same goes for Van Helsing's werewolf transformations, which are a bit more detailed. Just like The Prisoner of Azkaban, this too was released in 2004, so I guess animators and VFX artists were a lot more active during that year. It's really a shame that this movie went under the radar despite being a high-profile release. Also, it's kind of interesting that Kate Beckinsale is in this movie too, because she plays the vampire Selene from the Underworld series.
We are both part of the same great game, Gabriel. But we need not find ourselves on opposite sides of the board.
She transformed him into a hideous beast and placed a powerful spell on the castle.
Well, the D-transformation scene managed to enter this list, so it makes sense for the main transformation to at least grace my top 10. Seeing the prince turn into the beast here may have seemed cruel in terms of a long-term punishment, but the way he tried to spread all that sass for no good reason definitely would have annoyed anyone, even if it was a test. What really stands out to me here is the focus on the eyes as the prince turns into a deadly monster. It was neat work that didn't even rely on a full-body display. The shadow technique was pretty decent too, even though it's an overused method nowadays for sparing costs. I also want to just state that this scene has nothing on the OG animated features transformation, but I wanted to keep to live action adaptations for this video.
And all who lived there.
rats don't only exist in the world of hip-hop, you know. Apart from the likes of Tekashi 69 and Gunna, the wizarding world presented us with one of the biggest snitches in the world, Peter Pettigrew. The fact that his secret disguise was also that of a rat only furthered this notion, so when Lupin and Sirius finally exposed him in Prisoner of Azkaban, it was the most WTF moment we've ever seen in the entire series until that point. The transformation was once again on point, and the reason Peter gets up in front of a literal werewolf is because of the overall impact of his revelation. Man, Ron really can't catch a break, can he? This was his most precious pet ever, and it turned out to be one of Voldemort's trusted suck-ups.
Remus? Sirius? My old friend!
Well, this isn't much of a transformation on the outside as it is on the inside. And no, that isn't a shady Deadpool type of joke because Logan's entire skeletal structure had changed after this moment. Whether it was his anatomy or simply the replacement of bone claws for adamantium ones, this will always remain a legendary transition because of how drawn out the sequence is. Yes, we're supposed to feel the uneasiness of the whole thing because the Wolverine is in immense pain. So when he does break free with that epic roar and overpowered claws, we knew that we weren't looking at the same Logan again. This is a man who wants blood, and he doesn't care how many people need to see his member in the process. Well, at least Wade Wilson wasn't there for this. His presence would have definitely made things awkward.
Lock down!
Yes, you probably would have guessed seeing Smeagol turning into the Golem, so this entry shouldn't come as a surprise to you, should it now? What came as a surprise to me when I first watched this scene was the creepy nature of the man even before he turned into the monster he became. This transformation isn't just legendary, it also serves as an important metaphor for the dangers of addiction. The way we see different stages of Smeagol as he slowly gets consumed by the power of the ring was crafty and horrifying at the same time. The part where he eats that fish is probably in my top 10 most disgusting scenes of all time, and rightly so. This is one of the many reasons why Lord of the Rings will never be forgotten as a film series.
And we forgot the taste of bread, the sound of trees.
Way before the days of Bully Maguire, Peter Parker was nothing more than an innocent nerd who dreamed of getting with a toxic, manipulative, and selfish Mary Jane. One bite from a mutated spider was all he needed to get the girl and also transform into a total Giga Chad. The scene where he checks out his physique and his eyesight is a perfect example of how to familiarize your audience with the character while he's doing the exact same thing. It's not much of a change in terms of appearance, but the overall impact of this transition to Spider-Man was what kicked off an iconic trilogy and also changed the face of superhero movies forever. I mean, I'm still waiting for the day I get bitten by a radioactive spider. Those things aren't as toxic as some of the people I know. The only reason Nicolas Cage's Ghost Rider has been able to come this high up on the list is simply because of the man's performance. There's nothing too over the top when you've got Hollywood's favourite madman acting it out. This transformation into the infamous Ghost Rider is living proof of that. Johnny Blaze would simply not have the same impact if he was played by any other actor. So seeing Mr. Cage laugh like a crazy maniac while also burning in pain before he turns into a flaming skull is always going to remain iconic. Oh yeah, and if I want to include the hilarious performance he gives right before transforming, then this position is still a no-brainer. I mentioned Underworld briefly in the Van Helsing entry, so that should have served as a hint if you're familiar with the franchise. Michael's transformation into a lichened werewolf inside the cop car is one of the key moments of the film, and even though he doesn't complete his transition, what we see is more than enough for us to rate it as a classic. The gothic vibes, the acting, and the effects all come together to give us a beautifully horrific transformation that deserves a lot more credit than it gets. See, there's more to goth culture than just girls. But then again, this movie has Kate Beckinsale looking fine AF, so I've got to take back those words. Anakin Skywalker turning from one of the most promising heroes to the main villain of the Star Wars franchise has got to be a legacy moment in the world of cinema. After his battle against Obi-Wan left him on the verge of death, Anakin didn't have much to live for anyway. However, one transformation later, he becomes the one name who's become synonymous with the Star Wars franchise back when it used to be good. The cry he lets out after learning everything kind of made it seem as if he was done with a dental appointment, but man, this scene really sent shivers down my spine. Ladies and gentlemen, this is easily the best werewolf transformation scene of all time, and I can definitely say that without any reasonable doubt. Seeing David turn into a werewolf so abruptly without warning was a revolutionary moment for the world of cinema at the time. The transformation in itself is lengthy and is made to feel that way in order for us to understand just how painful it really is. Right from David screaming in agony to him begging for us to help by holding out his hand. There's not a single dull moment, and it established John Landis as one of the pioneers of horror instantly. To this day, there's no werewolf scene that can top this one, and I'm willing to bet that it'll be that way till the end of time. Hope you liked the video. Please subscribe to the TV Regent, and here's another video that you'll enjoy.